All right, everyone, we'll get started. Today is Friday, April 14th. The time is 10:06 a.m. This is the time and place for a workshop, the Cannabis Compliance Board. So with that, we'll acknowledge our friends in Carson City that we are video conferenced to. I will let the record quickly show that we are joined by Member Freilich in Carson City, Member Durrett in Las Vegas, and Chair Michael Douglas in Las Vegas. And so with that, I will then kick it over to Deputy Director Michael Miles, who'll give a quick intro, and then I think we'll go into the first public comment period.
Good morning, Chair, board members, and industry participants. Again, this workshop is to receive input on the possible repeal of certain NCCRs or amending the NCCRs pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order 2023-03. We are here to see how the regulations can be streamlined, clarified, reduced, or otherwise improved to ensure the NCCRs still protect the public without unnecessarily inhibiting the industry growth. As per item 1 of the agenda, we will open up the workshop for public comment. If you have a suggestion on repealing or amending the regulations or any of the items that are within the agenda, please hold those comments because we'll have a comment period during each one of the items. So let's open it up for public comment right now. Is there any in Las Vegas? Seeing none. Is there any in Carson City? Great, let's get going.
You know what? I'd love to give a public comment if I could.
Please step up here.
To the table. Okay. All right.
Please give and spell your name for the record.
Bob, K-U-R-I-L-K-O. I'm the CEO of Silver Lion Farms. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so I was really looking forward to this. I didn't know quite what the setup was like today. When I've run workshops before, and it's you sit around in a circle and everybody has a collaboration. I think this is a little bit different. So I just want to make sure that I covered a couple of things, and then we can get into some of the NCCRs and some feedback there. We've been, I want to give a little history quickly on our challenges in trying to get a license in White Pine County. We've been at this for about 21 months. And, is that okay? Oh, okay. No, we've been at this for about 21 months, and we've been trying to act on what we think is a clear mandate as outlined in 678B.2203 NRS for a licensing round for all rural counties. Each county shall be granted a medical cannabis license. So after petitions and letters and a lot of different communications, Tyler, you and I got together on the phone finally, and we talked with, I think it was Luke Rath, and we spent a good time on the phone. We talked about the different aspects of the challenges in the business. And after Mr. Rath offered up a technical reason why we couldn't move forward, which I responded to, and he immediately, just shut down, didn't say anything else for the remaining 45 minutes. Then what I was trying to seek to do after that was trying to understand why the CCB didn't feel like it needed to follow through on the legislative intent. And so finally, I made a recommendation. Can we just bring this before the board? So this is before we had any kind of conversation with the board at all. And I took about 3 runs at this and was unsuccessful in all 3 runs just to get it before the board. And then out of just trying to get something done, we started reaching out to individual board members just to try to get the visibility. And really what I was looking for is an explanation as to why we couldn't move forward on a law that was so clear. I mean, this language is incredibly clear. We had Senator Gokachia stand before the CCB just to reinforce the fact that the legislative intent was to get this done, and still no action with no reason as to why it couldn't move forward. So no new licenses, just none. And it was kind of one red herring after another that the county didn't pass an ordinance. Well, they did. We, of course, covered that up front. That the petition didn't have a market study. Well, we don't need a market study. Market studies only in government and business, market studies only apply to situations where you have contact with the public. Retail licenses have market study. We're talking about cultivation. We're talking about supply side. So that was another red herring. Didn't make any sense. Then we had to redo the regulations. Then it was the governor's executive order. We were going to do it, but the governor's executive order wouldn't allow us to move forward. One red herring after another. So I just want to say one more thing. In my 37 years in business, I've been in multiple industries. I've traveled the world. I've worked with governments in 9 countries. I have worked with many state governments, and I have never seen what I'm seeing here with the CCB in Nevada. I continue to scratch my head. I thought I had seen everything in 37 years. I have not. So my recommendation is the CCB needs to change its inferred mandate. What I mean by that is, based on its actions, I'm assuming there is a mandate. And that mandate appears to be more control, punitive, oppressive, got you agency. That's how it comes across. And it's not just me. I talked to a lot of folks out there in the state of Nevada. We have a budget of $10 million in the state of Nevada, and then we tack on another $8 million in punitive fines. I'm not sure that's good for an industry that's trying to grow. At the same time that the black market is completely growing and moving unfettered. So I don't understand that. I think we have an opportunity to get on different footing and have a different mandate moving forward that is good for the state of Nevada. So we got to remember, the regulated people in this room are the good guys. We're the ones that are trying to do it the right way. We're the ones trying to be following the law. And we got the black market just out there doing its own thing. And it's actually, you might say that who's smart? The black market? They could do it cheaper. They don't have any, nothing that slows them up. So I think we have an opportunity to do this a little bit differently and really be a friend and support for the regulated market in the state of Nevada. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that it's really important that we follow the open meeting laws. I'm extremely busy, we all are. But for me to even make a comment today, I have to buy a plane ticket, get a rental car, stay in a hotel so I can talk for a couple of minutes. And I've done this multiple times. I believe the CCB, and I've checked with the legislature, the CCB is under the open meeting laws. I should be able to have public comment from my home or from my office. I cannot. That's got to be fixed. So CCB is not a sovereign agency. It has to answer to the legislature in the state of Nevada. It's very clear. And this body can't just ignore the law. So there's a legislative intent and there's language in the law, and the CCB has to follow the law. That's extremely important. So I think there's an opportunity right now to move forward a little bit differently and serve the regulated market in a way where we can have true economic growth in the state of Nevada. Right now, it's going the other way. Thank you.
Any other comments in Las Vegas? Okay, on to item 2 of the agenda.
Did you go to Carson?
Yeah, we did Carson 4. And on to item 2 of the agenda. Please come up to the table and give your recommendations as to repealing or changing any of the NCCRs. Please, when making a recommendation, do the following. If you can, cite the regulation you're referring to. Please give a concise explanation of why the change should occur. Please list the adverse or beneficial impact of the change. What are the positive or negative economic impacts of the change? And potentially, what are the potential cost savings to the state, if any? Let's begin here in Las Vegas. Anybody want to Go first.
I'd also like to add just quickly to that, some have submitted some of their comments ahead of time. That's very helpful. So even if you come up today and provide some comments, please feel free to supply those written, after through email. That's just going to be helpful for us as we compile these and ultimately in a report per the executive order. So we just appreciate that as well.
Good morning. Director Cannabis, Chair Douglas, thank you for having us. Board members, thank you for having us today and for allowing us to speak on some of these regulations. My name is Nicole Buffong, for the record, NICOLE-BUFFONG. I represent Minorities for Medical Marijuana and the Chamber of Cannabis, and today, the Billo. We are grateful that the board decided to create a workshop to discuss amending NCCR Regulation 15, specifically 15.055, that requires a ventilation system and smell mitigation equipment. The requirements have put on a strain on license owners, and they are choosing to opt out of combustion inside of their consumption venues. M4MM supports new and innovative ways to meet these regulations, and we are confident that the Billo will meet and exceed the requirements of ventilation and odor mitigation. That is why I invited Chanel Lindsay here today to represent her newest invention and explain how this machine will be a game changer for indoor smoking at our consumption venues. Thank you for your time today, and I'm looking forward to Chanel's presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Hello, members of the board. Very excited to be here today, and thank you for taking the time to have this workshop so that we can give feedback and information, especially on new technologies that help push social equity forward. Just as a bit of background, I'm an attorney and inventor and a cannabis activist. As an attorney, I was one of the authors of Question 4 in Massachusetts that brought adult use legalization to Massachusetts. And after that, I was appointed by our treasurer to the advisory board, where I helped with the development and implementation of our first and revised set of regulations in Mass. In addition to that, I'm also an inventor, and I've developed and brought to market technology that improves and advances the industry for patients and for adult use consumers. I first invented a decarboxylating tech for people to make accurate edibles and topicals at home. Now that's a global brand with 5 patents that has helped countless patients. I'm so excited to be here today to discuss the historic progression here in Nevada in allowing cannabis consumption lounges and to provide a solution for an issue that's threatening the success of these businesses, especially social equity. As we all know, the current regulation HVAC requirements are onerous and very expensive. And in fact, they aren't even the healthiest solution available. I've developed a technology that performs better than the current requirements. It delivers better air quality, and it's more sustainable and affordable for applicants. It's just an all-around win. Billo is a revolutionary smoke containment and elimination system. And what it does is it prevents the smoke from entering the air in the first place, rather than the traditional system that's trying to clear the air after it's already been introduced into the room. So Billo holds the joint or bowl inside a containment center that is constantly filtering hundreds of times an hour, and it also pulls all of the exhaled smoke into the machine and through the filter. Because Billo doesn't allow smoke to escape into the environment, it provides a better and more consistent air quality than HVAC systems. It uses a HEPA filter and a patented containment system to allow users to inhale and exhale the smoke without escaping into the environment. I developed it for both the individual user and for the commercial side of the industry. It provides better air quality than the regulations currently for both the cigar and cannabis consumption lounges. It's also portable. We've collected data comparing Billo's performance versus approved HVAC systems in the existing cigar lounges, and the results were truly astounding. In each and every instance, the air quality using Billo was twice as good as that in existing cigar bars, and often 10 times better. For example, at all times, Billo ppm readings were less than 80% of those experienced at Caesar's Monte Cristo bar. Billo also provides a more consistent air quality experience because there aren't the spikes in ppm that exist when you're smoking in traditional HVAC systems. We're here presenting Billow Technology and Data and requesting that the CCB update the regulations to include this technology as an alternative to the current HVAC requirements for the cannabis consumption lounges. It's a better option, it's a more healthy option, and a more affordable one. Personally, I have such a vested interest in ensuring that social equity advances in this industry. And I know firsthand from being in Massachusetts that one of the biggest barriers is capital expenditure when these businesses are coming on board. And we've seen that despite the opportunity being created, if there aren't the right technologies and pathways for businesses to actually survive, the opportunity will never be realized. So very excited again to present Billow as an alternative, a healthier alternative for these regulations, and I'm excited to share additional data, videos, and content related to how this can help impact the landscape here.
Let's go.
Part of the follow-up, have you submitted anything in writing to the board?
So we just finished our readings yesterday here, and we will be submitting those electronically, and I can give you a quick view of what Billow looks like, just so you guys can see. And this technology can have many different iterations, including customized build-ins with different configurations for the consumption lounges. This is the technology for home use, which, like I mentioned, you can see the joint is contained inside this containment center. And this is pulling all of the side smoke. There's a place to light it. There's a lighter that goes in here. So nothing is ever going into the outside environment. There's a filter, a HEPA filter that's built in here. So the person is inhaling through a hookah-like tube, and as they're exhaling, the smoke is pulled back through the filter. So the smoke is actually never going into the outside air, which really allows us to keep those ppm readings incredibly low for those people around the smoke. And here's an example of this HEPA carbon filter. And like I mentioned, there are many different configurations of this device that could be used for the consumption lounges, and again, exceeding HVAC standards by far.
So you have some of the setups like almost like a hookah, so you can have multiple things coming out.
Exactly. And so, yeah, so that is what we contemplated in our various patents, all of these different ways for the configuration to for the device to be configured for large and small venues. And again, the idea that a social equity or any applicant would be required to build a $100,000 plus HVAC system into a building that they often don't own and not have that portability there. We love to have the solution to make a better, healthier, and more affordable industry.
And of course, she's already gone through the process of creating SOPs to, make sure that cleaning and all of those things come along with understanding how to use the machine.
Yes, and of course, we understand that this would be a consumption device as well as an HVAC device, and like Nicole mentioned, are very well versed in all of the different pieces that come along with that and helping to introduce this in a responsible way into the landscape.
Great.
Any other questions?
I would just ask, if you've thought about the regulations as they're currently drafted, so any potential changes that you'd want to see that would allow for that, if you could include that in the materials, that'd be helpful.
Okay, sure.
Amazing. Yes,
Yeah.
we'd love to include some draft language for your consideration. That would be fantastic.
Great.
That's presently in use in Mass?
So in Massachusetts, we are just considering our consumption lounges right now. So we'll be making the same presentation to folks out there.
One of the problems, there's not a lot of examples anywhere in the country.
Yes, but again, I think that the examples that have been set here, as far as the cigar lounges, really do set a standard with respect to air quality, and we can use and compare that and show that there are just better alternatives out there. And again, personally, advancing the industry and making sure that we are responsible neighbors, right, and that we aren't just blowing, smoke into the atmosphere or causing odor issues, right? And so Billow not only addresses the HVAC issue, but also the odor mitigation requirements that are also part of the consumption lounge requirements, right? And so really Billow can do double duty, and this technology can really help with, air quality, but also, reducing nuisance.
Mm-hmm. And Nevada could be first, you know, I know how innovative we like to be here. So it'd be great to be able to show how useful this machine is and Nevada be the test market for that. I mean, we've got the proof is in the test.
And the data doesn't lie. I say that all
Yeah.
the time when it comes down to the science, right, of what we're trying to do here. And the goal of consumption lounges is to ensure that people are able to enjoy and consume, but in the same vein that people are protected, especially workers. And this does allow an additional layer of protection and support for workers who are in these consumption lounges, who aren't there consuming, who are there, making a living. And we want to make sure that we're protecting everyone. Excellent.
Great.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
allowing us to present today.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, who's next?
Good morning, Lake Martin on behalf of the Nevada Cannabis Association.
And Brandon Wygand on behalf of the Nevada Cannabis Association, last name Wiegand.
And for agenda item 2, we have 2 recommendations. One is NCCR 6.025, which is the board authorized to collect fee for oversight, time and effort billing essentially. And so obviously we take the position that while this regulation allows the board to collect a fee from licensees, this is authorized by statute, either specifically or generally. And the practice of time and effort billing inhibits the economic growth of licensees, which should be repealed. In terms of cost savings or economic impact, be about $1.8 million a year.
And we also recommend that the board repeal certain provisions of NCR 15.055, specifically subsection or subpoint 1 and subpoint 2. That's the 30 air exchanges per hour and the 20 air exchanges per hour. As we heard previously, it's excessive, it's redundant. There's already language in the statute or in the regulations that require ppm monitoring and CO2 calculations. And it's a burdensome cost to the industry. Not only to the industry, if we can't get these consumption lounges open because licensees choose not to open these facilities, the state is losing out on tax revenue. That's it.
Is there do you have any suggestions for replacement for that? Because you're saying there should be no protections whatsoever within the consumption lounges?
I'm saying they're redundant. You already have.
It's just testing though for what it actually is. It's not actually protecting anyone. So that's it. Just asking if there's any other.
So I didn't have any suggestions on that. I'm totally open if there's additional language to be added. I think the intent would be, can we find a more reconciliatory approach that doesn't have a specific requirement to change out the air in the facility every 2 or 3 minutes, depending on the function of the facility. I think there are alternative methods and ways that we could meet the needs of the CCB, the protection of the public without requiring a burdensome and costly installation for HVAC.
Yeah, and I would just add, we've heard a lot of feedback, and I was looking forward to today to hear some of that feedback. And so similar to what my Deputy Director Miles said, if there's anything that you can provide, even if this ends up in a future discussion specifically on ventilation requirements, that's great too. But certainly want to make sure that we're balancing all the interest, in my perspective here, for these. But having some of that backup, and you mentioned the overburdensome, and you know this well. We put these regulations out there for over a year, and they sat out there, and we did a lot of workshops, and nobody commented. I think a lot of that had to do with nobody put it into motion yet, right? So we didn't know what we didn't know. But I think we collectively agree that was our starting point, and nobody had an issue with our starting point. But here we are now on the doorstep of launching lounges. And so I do look forward to having that conversation. But anything we can provide, so if this doesn't work, what does work, and why does that work better? And I think we can get to a good spot, or at least look forward to having those conversations to get to that spot.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, board members.
Anyone else?
Morning, board. For the record, my name is Mike Weevil. I'm the county manager in White Pine County. I addressed this board a few months ago to seeking the board's issuance of a license pursuant to NRS 678B 220 for medical cultivation for medical marijuana. Got a couple comments just to consider and to bring to your attention. Last time it was before the board, we didn't have your regulations before us to see kind of what the path was to go forward to open that licensing round for medical cultivation production. Now we have it in black letter in front of you. You can see some of the proposed language is helpful and clarifies that path should the board adopt it. And I am very supportive of the language that is proposed on Regulation 5.035. The only, the only comment I do have is if you look at subsection 3, it talks about the board may deny the request. If the board finds the request violates any statute, I mean, that's a given under law, or it will not promote the health, safety, and morals. The problem with this regulatory language is it directly conflicts with NRS 678B 220, subsection 3, which reads, with respect to medical cannabis establishments that are not medical cannabis dispensaries, the board shall. And we know what that language means in the NRS. It says A, shall issue a medical cannabis establishment license to at least one medical cannabis cultivation facility and at least one medical cannabis production facility in each county. So it talks about a bare minimum, like the floor that must be issued for licensure. So the only issue I have with regulations is this regulation gives the board the discretion to deny. It seems to be able to give the board the discretion to deny a request. That's what the language says right here. It says deny the request, not the application. I think the board always can deny an application if it finds the applicant later has some issue with it. But I don't think you can deny the county's request that you issue us the one license for each establishment under law. So I just consider that when as you're moving forward to look at that language. Other than that, I'm very supportive of this. In fact, I presume that at the next board meeting, you can have, and I know there's a bunch of notice requirements, but there's nothing in this language, even with the addition, that would prevent this board opening up that round and getting and conforming with statute and soliciting those applications, at least at this time, for medical and cultivation to be compliant with the shall language of that statute. And that's what we've been asking all along. So anyway, I appreciate that. Secondly, as it pertains to on your item 4A4 on NCCR 5.045, I was reading through the comments that have been submitted from the Nevada Cannabis Association. I couldn't agree more. The board has a lot of statutorily granted discretion to weigh and balance. And to evaluate the merit of the applicants, just like I was just talking about. And you'll never, I'm an attorney, and I've been an attorney for a while. You usually don't hear an attorney say this, but let's just leave the regulation alone. The way you have it written right now allows you to do the random generation for consumption lounges. And I think that's exactly what that was intended for. And I think that the simple way to move forward is not amend or mess with 045 at all and just leave it. Because it serves the purpose, it serves the public and the interest of what you've been trying to accomplish in 5.045, because you are expecting or do have so many interested applicants. That makes sense for consumption lounges. But outside of consumption lounges, when you look at production, cultivation, even adult use retail establishments, man, that's when you got to get into the nitty gritty. And what we don't want to end up with as a county is an applicant go through the whole process and someone who is not less than qualified. I know there's basic requirements, but someone who's less than qualified or less vetted or hasn't built the relationships or made the investment in the community to get that random generator number and then have a leg up on other bona fide corporations or companies. So just take that into consideration. I always liked finding a nice simple route and not overcomplicating things. And I would ask you not to modify 5.045 and actually leave it as written. I think it makes sense.
This one, jump in just because we're supposed to be back for it. The way 5.45 is written is just for consumption lounges. It's limited to consumption lounges, so we wouldn't be able to. So are you saying?
Leave it.
So like how do we go about issuing licenses?
No, well.
You still have to issue the license to.
It's the random generator information. Are you saying you still need a section like 5.045 absent the random generator language and the requirements in there to be able to issue licenses? Is that what you're saying?
We have no regulations whatsoever to hand out any licenses other than consumption lounges right now.
I see. Well,
that's the problem.
The simple way is to parse out that the language as to the random generator process and make it just specific, that section, to consumption lounges.
So what is your suggestion then for the criteria for handing out license, as you I'm sure clearly understood what happened in 2018 when we used a merit and grading and scoring basis, and there was litigation that's ongoing still today.
I understand.
I'm sorry, can I interject? That's not all necessarily because it was criteria of merit. I mean, we've all read the case and there were other issues with the litigation.
True, but most of it was about the ranking, and they came back and sued because they thought the ranking was done improperly.
The judge's order focused on the change to background checks, which was not related to criteria of merit, and the change in the background checks, and then the differing levels of access. That's what the judge's order focused on. So people can make allegations, but that's what the judge focused on. So not interjecting on which one is more advisable, but in reality, that's the litigation itself was, the criteria of merit was actually upheld.
But again, all the complaints were based on the criteria of merit, all of them.
Deputy Director, I would just, my suggestion would just be you move to number 2 in your regulation. And it just reads, if the applicant, and you're going to have, let's say 100 applicants, 200 applicants, I actually don't know. I'm just a small town lawyer. Right? You move to number 2, it says if the applicant has met the minimum scoring guidelines in the application. I mean, that's your first, potentially your first way to vet your applicants is you have your scoring criteria and you're still vetting and scoring. And that's probably even before it comes to the board, your director has that. His office has that ability to go through and vet those candidates.
And let's say this was a white pan, we'd say we get 20 applicants.
Okay, and they're
meet that criteria.
And they all meet the criteria. So you're saying they're all equally, everyone's perfectly equal, no matter what.
For the criteria, because there's no way you can, it gets subjective, and that's where you end up having mass
litigation, right?
So you have to come up with the criteria. Everybody gets a certain amount, the way they did it before, everybody came up with a certain amount of points and say everybody's on an equal basis. You say you get 20 applicants that meet that criteria. Then what do you do?
Well, when I have applicants before my board, we hold interviews and we interview them each individually, and it can get subjective. I know you're getting nervous, but we have grading criteria. We talk to the candidates, we look at their business plan, and there are still subjective criteria in which we try to make an informed decision. And a lot of that's codified by law, even in open bid processing. We still make a lot of subjective decisions as a board. And perhaps you narrow it down to your 20 applicants and you hold those interviews and you look at them and you have a good feeling about one, and you have a grading criteria that balances and gives more weight to different things this board is looking for. I'm not trying to make it more complicated. We'll just go back. The random generator is an interesting thought, and I get it.
Trying to make it more complicated, but
yeah.
With the lawsuits that are raging around the country over the issuance of license and those being arbitrarily excluded, we were trying to get away from that.
And the random generator does that.
You get in because you meet the base cut criteria, the minimum standards. Random draw, whoever gets drawn, and they proceed. And good feeling, bad feeling.
And they don't proceed. They still have a suitability analysis they have to go through our investigative team to actually get they don't get their license based on the random number generator. That's only part 1 of the application process. The suitability check is part 2 of the application process, which they have to meet, and they have to go through the board and create a presentation for the board, and the board has to approve them. But I also understand what you're saying, that what if they don't pass that? They don't pass that. It just pushes more time.
It's really interesting. I understand how you insulate the board and the state from liability, for sure. It's when you leave business up to state and the cards sometimes, and it is Vegas down here, and we leave it to cards, and get an interesting result that may not benefit and serve the state and its citizens. That's my only concern. You try to make the best. That's why you've been charged with that discretion, and you have your industry leaders, and you really know what you're looking at and what you're looking for. And you might be able to weigh things heavier in applications, social justice applicants, experience. But I just want to bring your attention. I think it's problematic, and I didn't come prepared for a solution, although I will next time. But anyway, that's the conclusion of my comments, and I appreciate the board's time to look at this.
We appreciate the comments. We're trying to get this moved forward.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
If you come up with that, please feel free. You can hold me.
Morning, making sure it's still morning. Chris Anderson with Solid Consulting on behalf of Planet 13 Holdings. I wanted to follow up on some of the subject matter NCA discussed with regard to ventilation. Looking at regulation 15.055, we have a potential solution that I wanted to bring forward. Subsection 1, we would propose putting a period after 30 complete air changes per hour at a minimum period, followed by excess air required to create negative pressure volume must be directly exhausted to the outdoors. And what that does is it, maintains the integrity of, obviously the air change capability is still there depending on, the capacity and how many people are in, the smoking room. And then you still have the negative pressure there, but we're not exhausting everything constantly to the outdoors, which is what, creates a huge tax on, it requires a different kind of level system, and it requires a lot of extra energy usage. And in the analysis that we had done by an engineer did not, in his opinion, result in better air quality. Just constantly exhausting that air to the outdoors versus, doing it by the occupants in the room and, by volume.
Just run it through a filter instead of directly venting it outside?
Venting air to the outside as needed to maintain negative air pressure, not doing that number of changes directly to the outside every single time. So we'd recommend a conforming change in subsection 2 as well, with a period again after 20 complete air changes per hour at a minimum period. Excess air required to create negative pressure volume must be directly exhausted to the outdoors. And then on the filter requirement, we were given the guidance that under subsection 4, that we should replace, or we could replace the provision of a HEPA filter and replace that with a MERV 14 or higher filtration system, with the understanding that that achieves the air quality that the board was looking for. Those are the 3 changes that we identified, and I can send you some information offline as well.
Can I ask you?
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, board. Thank you. My name for the record is Nicole Barber, NICHOLEBARBER. I am the Chief Scientific Officer at MB Cam Labs. Thank you for your time today for this discussion. As a representative of our lab, I would like to make a few suggestions for additions and amendments to the current regulations. I'll try to go through them quickly as I know there's a lot to discuss today. I did not cite on all of this specific parts of the regulations, as I believe some of these comments are relevant to multiple parts of the regulations. First, I would like to suggest that a fee schedule detailing the exact fees allowed to be charged and to include detail as to what those charges are for to be added in the regulations. As a scientist who has worked with many regulatory agencies on many different levels of ISO accreditation, FDA, EPA, DEA, and USDA, I can firmly say it is incredibly common practice to have this fee schedule included in the regulations. Even within the cannabis industry, this is a common practice in other states. To not have a clear fee schedule set and understood by all parties creating opportunity for excessive billing and extortion. The second suggestion we have is a change in the requirement for the credentials a CCB board agent and inspector must have. To properly regulate something, the regulator must be an expert in what they are regulating. The minimum requirements for a CCB board agent that inspects cannabis laboratories or any facility should match the minimum requirements that are required of the scientific directors at the least. Additionally, a set template should be provided to a cannabis establishment before the inspection or audit of the establishment of what the inspectors will look for and audit. Again, this is a very common practice of regulatory agencies and accreditation bodies. I would like to reference NCCR 11.025 subsection 6. This regulation describes the requirements for method validation and is a perfect example of how current regulations leave room for approval at the discretion of the board agent or agents. And without the requirement of expert credentials to hold the position of a board agent, this causes inconsistent enforcement and unfair advantages or disadvantages in the market. If this requirement is not in place, the regulator should not be allowed to decide when something is satisfactory to the appropriate board agent, as stated several times throughout the regulations. This language should be removed from all areas of the regulations. This leaves far too much room for interpretation and opens the door to corruption. The next comment is also related to inspections, and I would like to reference NCCR 11.020 subsection 3. The regulations state that inspection by an accrediting organization is not a substitute for inspection by the board or board agents. I would like to add the verbiage or something similar that states the results from inspections conducted by accrediting organizations must be utilized during inspections by any CCB board member or board agent and should not contradict parameters set by accrediting organizations. Additionally, I believe there needs to be a pathway forward during the approval process of emerging technology and methodology that is not halted by the CCB if openly working with accredited organizations such as ISO and AOAC that the CCB recognizes as international experts. The next and last comment is to request standardization of certain methods and regulations within the industry, especially across laboratories, and to revisit the needs and methods of some of the requirements for laboratory testing overall, specifically microbial and cannabinoid testing requirements. Current regulations create an unfair and volatile marketplace for not only labs, but also cultivators, producers, and dispensaries. There is far too much variation between reference and incorporated guidelines. For example, there are multiple organizations referenced in the regulations that contradict method and operational guidelines in themselves. This change could remove the act of lab shopping and the incredible amount of inconsistencies among labs that has shown to create another door for corruption to occur. That is all the comments I have today. There was some other comments that I had that have already been listed in some of the other laboratory recommendations, which we fully support. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to the outcomes of this workshop to advance and increase the positive relationship that the industry could have with the state. Thank you.
Can you submit some of those? Is it possible? You were reading it. Could you submit some of that so we can have that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And Member Freilich, if you'll have to just wave a hand or, yeah, we don't want to move too quickly here and, you know, miss an opportunity for you. So just acknowledging that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
If we're, Mike jumped up before we did anything. If you're talking about what I think is item 3 or 4, I think it's item 4, just jump up for item 4.
Regulations.
Yeah, for the regulations for the licensing round.
All of this.
Is it for the licensing round or for the general NCCRs? Because we have 3 different items. One was for the general NCCRs to remove and repeal. One was for the ones we suggested, and another one is for the licensing round that was specifically put in for the White Pine County issue. And that's item 4. If that's what you can talk about, please just wait till item 4. If that's fine.
Well, we're talking about NCCR 1 to 10, right?
Yes.
Regulations right now.
Yes, but we're specifically talking about, again, if you have other comments, please feel free to get up. I was just saying, if you're specifically talking about Reg 5, where we're going over the White Pine County licensing regulations, that'll be under item 4, and we're gonna have public comment for that as well.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on the current topics.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're talking about the proposed changes to NCCR 5, right?
No,
Would you restate your name, please?
sorry.
Just for the record.
My apologies. Yeah, we huddled back there and it sounded like it is open. My name is Bob Kuroko. I'm the CEO of Silver Lion Farms. Sorry.
No problem. These specific regs, those 5.0, the ones we're talking about that we referenced to make changes for the White Pine County licensing round, those are going to be held under item number 4. And we were specific, we're going to have public comment for those as well, along with everything else. So if you're limited to just those, please wait till item 4. If not, you can go ahead and go now.
Sorry. All right, I'll hold my tongue.
That was like 20 minutes. I have some changes to propose. Should I do that now?
Yes.
Maybe not. You got Pete.
Okay, so I have a couple on packaging and labeling. I think, now that we've gotten over the hump of consumption lounges, which was a big thing to deal with right at the inception of the board, it would be very helpful to continue to have these public workshops and go section by section. The first stab I'm taking is packaging and labeling. I think testing obviously should be on that list of looking topic by topic and making revisions, especially cleaning up like legacy issues that really, were projections of what we thought would be necessary and then can be cleaned up at this point if there's no, if that language isn't really necessary. So I have a couple suggested changes on packaging and labeling. I worked with Amanda Connor on it, so she'd come up in case I miss anything. And because I know we've been talking about these changes for like 8 years. And I also ran it by the NCA, ran it by Lake to make sure preliminarily there was some industry review of it. And but of course, this is just a workshop and there will be time for a lot more input on it. The main changes are aimed at, to start with, just removing some of the redundancies in packaging and labeling. I'll skip to those actually. Right now it's required to put keep out of the reach of children, and this is a cannabis product on the packaging and the labeling, so that's redundant. I think we should move it to just the packaging because the packaging is always required, obviously. The label can be, a QR code, so if you remove it from the label, it may not be seen. On the packaging, it'll always be seen. So I don't think we need it on the packaging and the labeling, and I will submit this, all these specific citations and suggestions on language. Let's see. I wish Kara was here so I could see her face when I say this. I think this will take some time in getting people comfortable with this, but ultimately it does make sense to not require labels at cultivation and production. They are redundant with the metric tags. So you can get all the same information from the metric tags. So right now we have a lot of redundancy in having 3 labels. Then there can be conflict among them. There's all kinds of issues with having 3 labels. Again, this is something that the industry has caused a lot of expense and confusion and has been an issue for 8 years, but now's finally the time that we could actually have the benefit of having the time to review it and discuss it and make those changes. I think there would probably need to be a little bit of time for these changes to be made, so they could go through current processes and products that they have. The other main suggestion would be to separate out the language relating to edibles versus concentrates. There's just a little bit of confusion, and a lot of this stuff, I was there when every single section was written, a lot of it was just hodgepodge together. And it was, oh, we got to put this. Oh, somebody else wants this. So it's been edited by the CCP quite a bit. I think Kara and Mike have gone through and cleaned up a lot of it, but I think separating those would be much more clear, and I have suggested language on doing that. And I want Amanda to go through that if she doesn't mind.
Yep. Amanda Connor for the record. On packaging, right now there's a section 12.015 and it combines requirements for edible cannabis products, and then underneath has some sections on non-edibles, so other types of cannabis products. The suggestion would be to make 12.015 specific to edible cannabis packaging so that it is clear and there's not confusion amongst what applies to what. And then to create a separate regulation for packaging that's non-edibles, everything else, because pretty much everything else has the same requirements, meaning usable like flour plus concentrated cannabis. So edibles have additional requirements, the THC symbol, the variation language, that kind of thing. I think for the industry and to eliminate confusion and some inconsistencies in review of packaging and saying what's required on packaging or not, it would be nicer to have it distinct and clear. I think that was it for packaging.
And then last, just a kind of cleanup measure under designations of persons under 5.010 number 2, not packaging and labeling, this is just for clarity. It currently states the following persons must comply with the provisions. And then it goes on to say a corporation and shareholders. Shareholders may be companies. And so there has been a little bit of confusion over, well, companies aren't required to comply with the other regulations. Their companies don't get agent cards. So it will just be cleaner to say, for the purposes of this chapter and chapter 678B of NRS, persons that are natural persons falling within the following categories. So so there's no issues going forward where somebody may be inclined to insist that a company get an agent card. This would clarify that that is not required. That's it. Again, I think now we have the benefit of not standing up the agency and dealing with consumption lounges. I will be coming forward with more language now I can put my 8 years experience and my law degree and my master's in gaming law to use with trying to help clean up some of the language and redundancies. The next one I would like to look at is training, because a lot of that is stuff that was required at the very beginning, and we could take more practical approach to training.
I know you have more than that, Amanda, so.
I actually do not.
Thank
you.
Surprise.
Yeah,
Jason Banyalas for the record, Cannabis Program Supervisor. So your suggestion about not having things labeled at cannabis or at cultivation or production, not all of that information is captured in metric. So there would just need to be, it would, but you would have to dig. So I think the purpose of that is for providing those things, right? So the final label for the consumer needs to have harvest date, for instance.
Oh, yes, there would still be a label at dispensary. So yes, you would still need a label.
Right, yeah. So
not at cultivation and production.
So in order to provide that accurate information for the final sales facilities to be able to provide that correct information, if we were to remove that requirement, there'd be another avenue to find that. If we were to just kind of not require the producer or the cultivator to provide it to the sales facility would then have to dig into metric, look at some of the history, and kind of parse it out. Another example of something that is required on the producer label that is also required that is not listed on the certificate of analysis is the solvent or gas that is used. Oftentimes the lab will just have the specific, like the general solvent that's used, but the requirements actually are to not say the class like a hydrocarbon, rather butane, heptane, or whatever your solvent or gas is. So I think the benefit of having that label provided from the cultivator or producer is that it's in one compiled area. So if maybe, so that would be, I think, the concern of removing that. So maybe there's another avenue to make sure that that is provided maybe with the manifest or something like that.
Possibly, I think we would want to hear from dispensaries on what is it they would need to see to be able to easily access.
Yeah, so that way they have all that information and they don't have to go digging for it, and maybe there'd be some more miscommunications and maybe a lot more effort on the dispensary side to try to dig for that information through metric, rather than upon the manifest have either the bulk or individual labels provided to them and they know that that information is already accurate.
Yeah, because I definitely want to propose something that makes it more difficult for them. So that's why I checked with them. And, but I would want to hear more specifically from dispensaries that, like, the person who is responsible for.
Like an electronic way that they can have it easily uploaded to their system or something.
Thanks, Jason.
And I missed the opportunity, thank you, to introduce Jason Banales, Keoki Allen, and Liz Perez, representing our inspection, audit, and our lab inspection division. So thank you, the three of you, for being here as well.
Hi, everyone. Karina Robinson. With this topic here, I also don't want to exclude the producers in this comment, because if we have a facility that has nuts allergens, the stores may not know that. So I agree with simplifying the labeling. I have been dealing with it myself for 9 years. So I'm right there with you, Rihanna. I still want 12.305B removed, please. It is the medical certificate number off of our label. And with the adult use system running our industry right now, that 20-digit number is pretty much irrelevant on our labels. And it has been for a very long time. I've been asking for this for over a year and a half. So I just want to make sure that while we're considering this, because I'll be the first one to say, I need to make this easier for all of us. And I support making it easier as long as it makes sense and that the information is delivered to the public correctly, because that is what we care about mostly, is getting great products from our company straight to the public. And we're trying to get these labeling straight. There's always been a misunderstanding of what a sublingual is versus an edible. And sublinguals are not concentrates. There is a wait time between 10 to 15 minutes before that onset may happen, which is different than an edible, and it's different than a smokable or inhalable. So I just like to just add that comment in right now. Sorry, I had to jump up for this, but this I felt was extremely important to not leave out the productions. And please don't leave out the cultivators as well, because they have certain grow methods and or fertilizer treatments and feed treatments that some consumers out there are aware of, and they will use or purchase a different cultivator's products because of the awareness of something that's being used in another facility. So the right to know is the most important thing, and we really support that. So just don't leave out the production, please.
I have questions about the portion, the medical certificate, removing it from the label. Okay. Can you please fully explain that issue? Because
yes.
I think now is definitely, I'm sorry that that has not been addressed here. Can you explain that?
Sure. So on our product compliance labels, the actual label that we print from our COAs, that label right now is still requiring us under 12.035B to insert the medical metric certificate number. That number is required on the label, and then right below it, it says that we are also able to use our company name and or our CEID, the 4 or 5 digit RP number or C number, right? If we can use those two items and or one of those, the medical, excuse me, the medical number for a metric is obsolete. Most of the system is being run under medical or under adult use. I'm sorry for that. It's all being run under. So what it is if we can put, for instance, Taproot RP098, what do I need that medical certificate number for on my product compliance label?
Yeah, Mike, do you mind?
No, this is actually the first time I've heard it from industry. I've heard it from our people that they wanted to remove those numbers a couple times. So
put that on the list to remove.
Yeah, absolutely. It's already on there.
No, yeah,
Said I look right at you.
And Karina's made public comment. I think a simple addition of or cannabis establishment ID, and I think that one was just missed on the B.
Yeah, it might have been, yeah, because I know you guys have pushed for that as well, so. Yeah.
It looked like something when the CCB came in that it was just overlooked. And it was something that I saw in the regulations about almost a year and a half now ago. And I reached out to Jason and said, hey, I don't believe that a petition needs to be written to get this updated because I feel that it was an oversight on the board's part. Can you please look at this and see if we can get this cleaned up? As an operator, I'm looking for, and I'm dealing with the nitty gritty on a daily basis. And I'm trying to also get that information out to the other agents we work with and explain to them why we have to put a medical license number on something that is not a medical product, nor do we use the medical certificate under it. And if it's going to an adult use only store, what does it have to do with my medical certificate? So this has been something that has been on, I guess, my clipboard for a while.
Well, thanks for bringing it up. That's probably one of those definitely got to go on the list because it's been discussed before.
Okay.
There's almost no reason. I mean, they prefer having just the CID number on the tags as well. So.
I think it will go on the list for repeal, right? Yeah. So it's
The idea is on there already.
You got it. You got it.
Thank you so much for working with us, you guys. This is probably, I come from medical management, food and beverage, over 30 years in this town. I'm a born and raised Las Vegas native Nevadan. I started in nonprofit, worked with Chair Douglas's wife for many years. And this is probably one of the most difficult but rewarding systems to be able to know that we are trying our best and it's not a fight. This is, we have to keep asking and asking and asking. And sometimes, you guys, when we ask multiple times, it is almost a defeatist attitude. We feel defeated. But I appreciate 100% the awareness that you guys offer us and that you are listening to us. That is sincere to me. So thank you very much.
Thanks for your comments.
Sorry, because you're talking about packaging and labeling, I just want to, and Tyssee, Tyssee for Curaleaf. I've talked to all of you, I think, about the packaging and labeling regulations. And so just to support Member Durrett, Mrs. Connor, and Ms. Robinson in a complete revamp would really be appreciated. There's a lot of inconsistencies, so I don't need to go on into detail, but it would be very much appreciated by the industry.
But if you do have details.
Yes, that's a very specific, now's the time to do it. So.
All right, I can submit some. I would encourage, this language, Ms. Connor took the time to sit and look at it. And so the industry needs to come forward with those proposals.
Mrs. Connor represents Curaleaf.
Yeah.
We support her comments. I have some specifics from conversations I've had, and I appreciate the board and the agents working with us on some of the recent changes about pre-printing and the 5 items, and it's very inconsistent in portions of the regulations, and I could give those specifics.
Yeah, exactly. Write it down.
Please.
I have it, actually. I'll submit it.
Also, just so everybody's aware, this won't be the only time, right? We discussed packaging and labeling. I think it was a year and a half to 2 years ago, we did a workshop solely on packaging and labeling. It's probably a great time to do another one, and we should probably make those regular anyway. So if anything you could submit would be great, either now or in the future.
Okay, great. Will do.
I have a question. Is there a way to address the issue on social equity in the application process here or not?
Just jump up. Yeah, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is, for the record, Denise Mejia. I am the co-founder and vice president of the International Cannabis Businesswomen Association, also a member of the CEIC program. I am a participant of the licensing application for social equity and licensing in the lounge capacity. Good news was I was the first one selected for the lounge licenses with a co-partner that we came into fruition during the program of CEIC. And one of the things that I'd like to maybe recommend and address is if we're all going to start up as an existing business owner and entrepreneur myself, in different areas of industries, work comp litigation, trucking, et cetera, and all these other components. One of the things that I did find in the deficiency of the applicants is the lack of the knowledge, the training to properly structure a business before coming aboard with any partnership relationships, any investor relationships, and the disadvantage of not having the proper direction how to do that causes disadvantage for, as it is, it's already a social equity issue. We want to be able to bring people that have that opportunity, that are being properly educated, that are being properly structured and brought to their attention how to start up the business. So intermediate workshop that can comply with the CCB and any independent resources like CEIC and any other nonprofit organizations that are trying to facilitate social equity, to participate in the industry, to do it reasonably. And because the way it looks like, and I'm going to give you my personal experience, because here you are talking to somebody who is a business entrepreneur and have been put in a very unique situation. Took a class with one of the participants. There is collaboration between CEIC and the students to indirectly introduce investors during the process of the application. And suddenly, if you've got investors coming in to help, but not necessarily help because they don't really know what they're doing, is sometimes they're literally selling their soul to an investor so that the investor can manage and operate the business. And so it's taken away from the social equity opportunity to have fairness in it and more to be used for our investor to go and open up shop and cut them like a piece of slack of money, but leave them hanging from the profits that should be also reasonable to the social equity applicant and any partners involved. However, in my situation, the social equity participant that I took the course with the class to come in together and set an example, being a woman in the industry already, said, okay, so here's two African-American, Hispanic, Latino, applying for an application with a concept that was very unique. But we had the experience that during the interim of the program, the program organizer, Aisha Goins, and the CIC team that was running the program introduced her to another investor at a given moment. And that investor went and put numbers on her head. And suddenly, while I was out of town in trial on a work comp claim, came back home and found that I was taken off the license illegally and inappropriately without my notice, and off the documents and off the LLC, when the LLC that needed to be a component of the application required me to be on it because I live here in Nevada. She doesn't live here. She lives in Milwaukee. So these types of scenarios seems to be I'm not the only one who has experienced something similar. I've been hearing something similar in other social equity applicants as well. The disadvantages of not being properly structured as a business and not being properly educated and introduced into the industry the way they should be and not given the right opportunity. So if there's any way that there can be any implementation of the social equity applicants to have the proper education, the proper instruction, and in compliance with CCB, because as an LLC or any kind of business, you at least want to be in the right place at the right time with the right paperwork. You don't want to go in there half blinded and just following other people's directions. If you're going to come in as a business owner, you have to have responsibility to identify and understand what it means to be a business owner, not somebody to be sitting there for an investor to sell your soul so that they can have all the opportunities and leave you hanging. So in all fairness, speaking on both ends, we need to find a way for that not to repeat itself, because it seems to be a repetitive situation. So social equity, for as much as they want to leverage themselves, they're being limited when these things happen like this. It's not really helping the social equity community. And if CCB is collaborating with organizations like CCIC, EIC, I feel that there should be some kind of educational programming collaboration so that the structure is introduced accordingly and they understand the liability and responsibility they have coming into this industry. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Have you voiced some of those concerns to Clark County?
Yes, I have.
Because they're the sponsor of some of those programs.
I am in the process of dealing with Dale, I believe is his name. Somebody at CCB were already in communication with those issues as well, yes. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Thank you.
And I'll just, quick plug for, the state of Nevada does have a Department of Business and Industry. They do have a business resource center, and they have, a calendar of events. So they have different events throughout the year. So it looks like, tomorrow they have one on basics of starting a business, and then they have several others. So for people that may be transitioning into industry or starting up a business, look into the Business Resource Center, under the Department of Business and Industry. They have a bunch of free workshops.
Thanks for that, Jason. And let's break this up a little bit and jump up to Carson City. Anybody up in Carson City want to get up and make comment?
Hello, Brett Scolari with Strategies 360. Won't take a lot of time. I just wanted to thank you all for putting this workshop together. I wanted to come up in support of the packaging and labeling language that Rihanna and Amanda put together. And we also were hoping to have some specific recommendations on the ventilation regulation today. We do have some clients working on it with their mechanical engineers. So I hope to have that in the near future, and I will submit it when it is received. Thank you.
Thanks. Please do.
Will Adler with the Sierra Cannabis Coalition. I would like to ditto those comments in support of the packaging and labeling changes. Just some clarity and some continued progress on those after all this time would be great. And then just in general, I would like to still see some sort of best practices workshop or some sort of state analysis of the cannabis lab testing program as we see it today in comparison with other states, or just sort of doing a forward-looking assessment of could we be doing it in some other or better way. Thank you for that. That's a continual issue of ours, but we'll see if it comes up today.
Thank you. Anybody else up in Carson?
Lively group up there.
Anybody else down here under for item 2?
I actually do have something that I want to bring up regarding packaging and labeling real quick. I mean, that's not the sole reason why I'm here to begin with, but for the record, my name is Rita Scalero. I have been in the industry now for over 5 years. I work as an inventory manager. Hi, Jason. I work firsthand with the products. I receive them as they come in directly from the vendor. And I do just want to put out the comment that the more information on the labels, the better for us as the dispensaries. We need as much information as possible that is correct. And, you know, the dates are very important. The batch numbers are very important. All of those things are very helpful to get us to make our jobs more simple and get those products out on the shelves as quickly as possible. I did have a question for you, Rihanna, about what it was that you said about the labels. Did you mention not having specific information on the products going forward?
So the overall concept would be the 2 warnings that are also on packaging, that you wouldn't have it on both the label and the packaging, and then not having labels just at cultivation and production, because you can get that information from Metric.
Okay. And also, would that also have to do with anything with the barcodes that the production and cultivation facilities provide for us?
Through Metric?
Well, when we receive products, they are usually already barcoded.
At the dispensary, when you receive it at the dispensary?
Yes. They already come barcoded from the cultivation or production facilities. And then that way our facility, our dispensary, doesn't have to put the barcodes on those products.
Is she talking about the Metric, you think?
Yeah, they do.
It's not a SKU. It could be a SKU. So there's 2 different ways that it's compliant to do it. It states there, unless preparing for bulk packaging. So it's kind of a business decision whether to provide those SKUs on each individual label or to maybe do it on the entire box. So sometimes the SKUs are already individually labeled on the individual units.
Metric, we're talking about Metric.
Yes, so our Metric tags and our barcodes are the same number.
Yes.
So they matched Metric perfectly.
But it's different information from the SKUs, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it can be. So a lot of people use the SKU to match the metric number, which makes your inventory reconciliation a lot easier. Some people have their own point of sale system identify a separate SKU number. So it can be done both ways as long as the inventory matches up. But again, it can also be done in a way that the bulk label is packaged and not into each individual unit is labeled. And then it falls on the dispensary to then have each individual unit labeled for sale.
Okay, so there would be flexibility basically between your own SKU and a metric.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to clarify that because currently that is what I do for a lot.
You receive, you're in like.
I'm an inventory manager.
Perfect. That is exactly when, yeah.
When I heard you guys say you wanted to hear from like a dispensary.
Yeah, exactly. That's the exact position. Exactly. So you normally get that information from a SKU that's created that mirrors the metric information?
Correct.
Okay, so this wouldn't be a problem for you?
Hopefully not. No. No, and I'm just thinking like with 420 coming up, that's like the national like holiday for our industry and we have to get those products out on the floor immediately. So when we have to sticker anything, it just takes up like an extra, it could take up like a whole day, you know what I mean? So we definitely just want to try to eliminate the amount of time it takes to get a product from receiving it in a delivery to getting it onto the sales floor.
I think this does not, I think this does not in any way negatively impact dispensaries. I think it mostly positively impacts the environment, resources, eliminating duplicative resources, and cultivation and production. And if there are suggestions of how labeling could improve at dispensary, please submit them.
Yeah, absolutely. May I go ahead and speak about why I'm actually here today? Okay, so I'm here on behalf of Sinsemilla Works. My email is actually attached to this package. So I'm here today to bring up the very important issue of destruction in this industry. There is not a standardized way for destruction to be taken care of, and we want to bring forth a solution for that. I feel since I have been doing inventory for a very long time now, I have seen firsthand how it's handled, and I personally don't agree that it is being handled in a professional manner or in a way that we should be proud of as an industry. I think that it needs to be handled more safely and more environmentally sustainably. So that's why we're here today. This is Eddie Scalero.
How we doing? I've background a little bit. I have managed from Canopy when it was medical. I opened MedMen's here, the apothecary shop before Cookies, and was at Showgrow for a short period of time as well. One of the issues that we identify constant is the destruction methods along with the destruction reporting. We've identified some inconsistencies on both sides, and we feel like the service that we would be able to provide would be able to kind of bridge the gap and make it possible to have a beautiful relationship between the industry and the state. It's kind of nice being on both sides of the fence where you can help out both sides. Like, we want the dispensaries to be compliant. We really want to alleviate the fines, alleviate the mess. And we know, and my sister knows as well, just from reporting, there's always inconsistencies. So what we're trying to do is provide a service. We already know we've been approved for third-party destruction methods. We're working with another company that has an organic way of destroying the product. And we would like to have, basically, we can't find anything for a license that we're looking for. So it's basically creating now an industry within an industry to help the industry as a whole. We've looked online. We don't really see a destruction license per se. And there's really nothing for metric for us that would be able to, what we would ultimately like to do is take the destruction that a lab, a grower, or a dispensary has, put it into our inventory system, be responsible there for the inventory and the reporting to the state in metric, alleviating the whole issue of falling on the dispensary to govern themselves and make sure they're doing it right. Not only are they not doing it right, but we also have an organic way to give back to the community. The product that we use, you guys already know, Blackout 360, that we're going to be hopefully going forward with. Everything goes organic. Once we grind it up, it becomes a mulch. We can actually just grow. You can grow right from it
It is now unrecognizable. It is unusable like it's supposed to be. It is not that method that we do with the kitty litter and having people dive in the dumpsters and still be able to get what they want. So we want to take that whole thing out and kind of make it bridge the gap, basically bridge the gap, and be able to be there for the service for not only you guys, but for them as well.
That's great. Do you have anything similar to the first presentation, anything that you can send us as backup, or is that what?
Yeah, we have some other documents that we can definitely send up for sure. Yeah, absolutely do that. And I know you guys have been in contact with Blackout 360. I know they've proposed some things and shown you guys the science and all that. If we need to get that too, I can get it over again to send it your way to show the construction method that we have is actually so much more beneficial to the environment as a whole. We don't want garbage bags in a dump. We don't want our stuff going to a dump. We want to be able to recycle, reuse, make it one industry to where, now that we're creating that, we're also giving back. And it would be a beautiful thing. We just need to find out the direction of getting a license and being able to get a license from Metric to have all this, so we can actually work together to do it.
And that's what I was thinking about. This almost seems like it would need a new, like a destruction license to be able to transfer the.
Exactly what we're saying. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think today was like the last submitted thing to the legislation for changes. So I'm really looking to that detailed because that it sounds like something that could really be useful. But
Well, I'm thinking with, you guys are talking about consumption lounges coming out. My brain is, where's all this waste going to go? We're going to be putting a lot of stuff into the public. There's going to be individual use now. There's going to be, cannabis lounges. We're thinking about cultivation, production, and labs. We want to take care of that. But there's also going to be consumption coming out. We want to get ahead of the game so that the waste that's going to be coming is, we don't know what that waste is going to look like. But we want to have something in place so that we can get ahead of that, if that makes sense.
Again, alleviate the stress of the dispensaries doing it incorrectly, being able to have the fine. That's on us. We're going to have a method that's approved. We're going to have a way that's approved. You guys will be working with us. You guys can audit us whenever you want and show that this is, and it would be that other method. Not that every lab or dispensary would use us. We're here for them and they'll see the benefits of it from the other ones when we do start doing it.
To create a safety net for the people who are focusing on sales and focusing on the consumer. We want to focus on the people who are focusing on the consumers. You know what I mean? We need to focus on the industry while the industry focuses on the consumer.
Yep.
That's my goal.
Yeah, we'll have to kick that around, see if we can find a way to do it without, because transferring the product to another entity is the problem. So we'd have to figure out a way around that.
Now, why would that be a problem?
Because everybody in the process, including the delivery, is all licensed. They're all, everybody who has control of the cannabis at any point in the procedure is licensed.
So it would only be a problem just because we don't have the license.
Yeah, that's that.
I know.
I like the idea. I like the idea.
I know exactly how it's going to work once we do have a license, but
it's
getting the license.
And what does it look like? Right.
Exactly. If we even need one for sure, though, I mean, we got to kick it around.
What if you do the construction at the?
At the facility?
Yeah.
We can do that as well. We can have it virtually sent to us so that at that point it won't be in their metric. Now it's in our metric. If you guys want to see their destruction, we will look in our license for it.
You wouldn't have your own metric because you wouldn't have your own license, but if you do it as an independent contractor, you can do that.
Okay. So, we would just have to set it up in a, in a room with cameras, obviously, so that when the CCB comes to do audits, pull up this time when destruction was here, perfect. We have that written down. We'll have logs. We'll have everything that you guys require of us, and we can totally do that.
But so you need changes in the regs to have a different process for destruction, like, because right now it has to be 50%, right, non-cannabis.
Yes.
All that. So you would need a reg change. So you need to submit requested language for reg changes and then plan to do it.
I believe there is from Blackout 360, they have submitted some reg change. I think they're waiting on the response as we speak. When that goes through, what we're looking at is more of alleviating their waste from their system into our system. And then destroying it either on property or at our facility that we have under Canada. Again, same way. But that's really just that's the gap. That's where we're not 100% sure how to go about it because we didn't see anything for destruction. So
I think that's the biggest problem is transferring it to your places compared to on site. So we'd have to kicking around a little.
Be a cool destruction license, another innovative thing that Nevada is doing to do it the right way, you know, be ahead of the game.
We just want to help.
We're here to help.
That's all it
Yep.
is.
We're not here to sell any products. We're here to
No.
make it compliant.
I just want to see the
and-
industry get
and
cleaned
good
up.
and
You know,
get
it's
clean.
been 5 years recreational, almost 6. You know, and this is something that I feel like is long overdue, as stated in my email. But I definitely think that this is the future and where we should be going. We need to clean up the industry before it gets any further along.
Great. If you have any more information, please send it on to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else here in Las Vegas? Anybody in Carson? I'm going to move on to item 3. Sorry. Any of the board members or chair, anybody want to speak on any of these items other than what Member Dredd already mentioned? Okay. There's nothing else. Let's move on.
Oh, I have a question. What's the timeline for at least, because there's a moratorium in place on adopting new regulations, right? So what would be our timeline for making the changes that we?
These are going to be submitted in the report to the governor's office, and then I'll find out after that, because honestly, I don't have that answer.
All of them will be submitted in the report?
All the ones we want to remove, it can be above 10, but.
Okay. What about the suggested changes, not regulations suggested for repeal?
And those will be, as soon as we're able to do another workshop and change, we'll put those on.
Okay. We don't need the governor's approval to do another workshop, right? So we could keep it moving while we're waiting for the ability to be able to change regulations?
There'll probably be some clarification needed from the governor's office, but the report will not only include repeal, but also suggestions for amendments that we received at this workshop. So I think step 1 is May 1st, and I believe there'll likely be some guidance, given that that's the deadline for all the agencies. And if there's not, we'll get that.
One more question, though. We're not just going to include everything that was suggested today, right, in the report?
Quite a bit.
We are. Okay.
Why not?
Okay.
All right. And now move on to item 3 of the agenda. These proposed removals are for clarification purposes, as all of you can see. NCCR 1.145 and 1.230 are being removed as the term physician and taxpayer are not really used in the NCCRs. NCCR 5.025 and 5.030 being removed, as there is no longer any authority for the old one-to-one medical license to receive an adult use license. And finally, NCCR 10.010 is being removed. It is basically superfluous language and is no longer needed. Is there any comments just on these portion and these specific regs here in Las Vegas? Great. Is there any comments in Carson City on these specific regs? These are the specific removals we are going to recommend, but again, they're clarification housekeeping purposes.
None.
And seeing there's none, we'll move on to the final item. Right. As pretty much all of you know,
Mike, I'm sorry, I have a question.
Good.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about this. The repeal of 5.025, where if you had a medical license, you would be able to apply for your adult use. Okay, so that was not statute, that was only in regulation. Now that regulation has been replaced by these regulations. So 5.025 replaces the regulation where you would be able to do that. If you have, say, I know there's one in Fernley, right? There's one in, I think, Goldfield. There's a few licenses that are medical only. The state never opted to reopen a licensing period to afford them an adult use license. So has there been any discussion with those licenses that now their opportunity to get an adult use license would be foreclosed by repealing this?
We've had discussions with them before, and it's been foreclosed long before. As soon as that other regulation was removed, it was foreclosed.
So I don't understand that, because this regulation replaced that regulation. So the one under NAC that allowed you to do a 1-for-1 was replaced by this one. So there is still authority to do that. When we repeal this, we'll no longer have authority to award a 1-for-1.
Because I don't think there's any authority right now to do it. However, the board can always bring it up and create another reg similar to the other NEC if they wish to try to do it. I just don't think there's any authority for it right now. That's why we're removing these two.
5.025 is the authority for it. I don't understand how you're saying there's not authority for it. There is. 5.025 is.
But there's no backing in the statutes for this reg anymore. None. Before it was 5. I sent them to you before. There was this 2.00 and 2.10 or something. At least had some authority, whereas limiting medical licenses to be able to apply for adult use licenses. At least there was some authority. Now there's nothing in statute that supports this at all. Right now, the only way to get licensed under the statutory authority is to apply for a license in a licensing round. There is just no authority for this whatsoever.
I would just say if there's concern, we should have further discussion about it. I mean, this is meant to take out things that don't make sense or of a housekeeping nature. So by all means, if there is concern, I think we can have further conversations.
I agree. We just leave it in and not take.
I think it's potentially, okay. There's definitely, we don't need obviously any regulatory authority. We have the regulatory authority. The statute you're saying that this came from has been repealed. I'm not 100% sure. I would have to look at it. I'm not 100% sure that no other statutes replace that statute in the sense that this could have fallen under that new statute. And so I just want to make sure that the licensees that are impacted would agree. Because they may believe, and they may have an argument, or an attorney may have an argument, no, 5.025 does have authority under some other statute.
We're also happy, I think maybe we can do an initial council review from our side and start there and see if we need feedback, if that works for you. Member Durrett.
It's not a big deal. It's just, I think those licensees should be aware that, because I think they're all planning on getting adult use licenses someday. I mean, they're still pushing for them.
And again, this may all be resolved shortly with statutory changes anyway, hopefully.
Yeah, that was my other question. If, I think it's SB 277 passes and there's only one license type, then none of this will matter, right?
That's correct. Is there anything else on item 3 in Carson or Las Vegas? All right, let's move on to item 4. As pretty much all of you know, we just created a process for licensing consumption lounges. These changes will make that procedure the default way to perform licensing round for all types of licenses. 5.035 creates a petition process for local jurisdictions to request a medical-only licensing round pursuant to NRS 678B220 subsection 3. The remaining changes are changing terms such as the term consumption lounge to establishment. That also makes it clear to list potential owners who may own 5% or greater in the new establishment. On a fully diluted basis. It also specifies that social equity requirements only apply to licensing rounds where social equity will be a component. Any comments to these recommended changes here in Las Vegas? That's these changes.
And to add further context to this, these regulations came up for a board meeting. Yes. There was discussion, public comments on these regulations. The board directed us to proceed with an additional workshop, given the public comments. So that's why we're at where we're at with this particular section.
Correct.
Great. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, I'd like to, Bob Kuroko, I'm the CEO of Silverline Farms, and I wanted to cover a couple of things in here. The first one is a little bit nitpicky, but there's a reason I wanted to call it out. It's in item number 1 under 5.035. It talks about the Board of County Commissioners of the county must submit the request on a form prescribed by the board. It's very nitpicky, but the reason I bring it up is it's got to be super clear what that form is. You know, we've had some confusion around forms. What's a proper petition? Is it on the right form? Does, this kind of thing where it's unclear. And because it's unclear, if you do it wrong, then things don't move forward. My request would be make this abundantly clear in terms of the form.
If it's passed, we'll create a form and put it on the website.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Second one is 5.035, item 3. And I think Mr. Weeble brought this up as well. The board may deny the request if the board finds the request violates any statute and will not promote public health, safety, morals, good order, or general welfare of the inhabitants of the state of Nevada and a declared policy of the state. My request would be give this a lot more clarification. Typically, when I deal in these kinds of matters in business contract law, it's just about you spell out acts of moral turpitude, or you can, in this case, maybe it's other criminal activity not related to cannabis. There's a lot of different ways to handle it, but the way it's written is so broad that it gives a lot of subjectivity around it. My request would be to consider strengthening that and making it very, very clear. I want to talk about item 5.040. It's all about the submission of the application for cannabis. And I think from an overall standpoint, it's the way it's written is very one-sided. It talks about all the things that an applicant can do wrong to have the application denied. And I would like consideration to really revisit this. There's a section in here that talks about, it's basically all up to the applicant. And from the CCB standpoint, it just talks about failure to submit an application in a timely manner for any reason, including technical issues, will result in denial. And talks about questioning on the application or application submittal process may only be submitted in writing to an email designated explicitly for that purpose. And it talks about how the CCB doesn't really have a requirement for accountability. So there's not a lot of balance in the way this is written. There's a lot of reasons why it could be denied, but my request would be to write it in such a way that the CCB has an obligation to get back to the applicant so the applicant can be compliant. And there's some small changes we can make there. I'd like you to consider.
The problem with some of this, we're limited by statute, the certain amount of time we can have open licensing round. So we have to make it very clear. You must submit the application with this open licensing round.
Sure.
If you have, the other email thing was just questions. You have questions before the process, submit it in writing. That's all it is. So we can respond and everybody can get the answer, not just the individual. This really isn't as limiting. You say we didn't have almost any problem with this in the consumption lounge licensing rounds. You just have to do it within the time frame.
Understood. I think I understand your point, and I'll go on to say, regarding such questions, the board cannot guarantee a response with any particular time frame and or prior to the application submittal deadline. So if there's a material fact that needs to be clarified to allow an applicant to properly meet all the requirements, and the response is going to be based on the response from the CCB, and there's no accountability with the CCB to supply an answer, I think that's an issue.
It's really not the issue you think it is. Once you see the application, it's a very simple, straightforward application. Now that we've already done around, it's literally fill in the blanks, answer the questions, check mark here. We're just basically asking you to answer honestly. This was only put in for in case we get like a mass amount of questions at the last minute.
Right.
We're not able to get to all the answers. That's why this was put in. We are really good. As you can see from the last round, we put up videos on exactly how to do the application and how to do the rounds after. We did everything we could possibly to make this process as easy as possible for the applicants.
So not to belabor this, but the reason it caught my attention as I was going through this, your agenda was a little confusing for today. And from my perspective, so I called in the CCB office to get clarification on a simple matter. And I got tripped up here earlier because it's the issue that I wanted to discuss. And the person on the other end of the line said, we can't answer a question over the phone, submit it via email, and we can't guarantee we can get back to you in time before the meeting. So that was an actual occurrence that happened, and I don't want that to happen in an application process.
And that will happen in an application process. If you call in and ask a question, they're going to ask you to submit it in writing.
That's fine.
Specifically, because
a timely response.
And there always is. This is put in here again in case we get 3,000 questions at the last minute.
Understood. I'm just bringing up things that I think are important to talk about.
I understand. I just want to explain to you so you understand because you haven't went through what the application process is.
I have. Item number 5.045. And this is the random number generator. And Mike Weeble from Lake Plain County talked about this. And I think there's needs to be consideration for a rural county. I understand if you have multiple license applicants and there needs to be some kind of scoring beyond suitability. And I understand the legal problems of the past, and I'm sensitive to that. In a case where you have a county who's authorized one license, they're going to live or die by that applicant or that licensee. If you take a step back and really understand how the law was written and what it was looking to accomplish, what the outcome was, it was all about economic diversification. It was all about economic development. So if I'm a county manager, I'm a county and I want to maximize my one license, I want to make sure I get the best licensee I possibly can. And to have that up for chance doesn't seem prudent. Again, if you go all the way back as to why the law was written the way it was written to get an outcome. That outcome is optimization around economic development and diversification. So my request would be consider suitability, scoring for suitability during the application process. And if there are multiple applicants for one slot, then empower the county for just the rurals where they only have one. Empower the county to actually make the call. And they can bring it to the county commission. They can vote on it. There could be a process established there. And from a legal liability standpoint, I think that would probably meet your needs. You don't want to be sued. You don't want to be liable for any kind of issue where you played favoritism or something like that. So just a consideration, I think the counties would welcome that approach. That would be my recommendation on that. I also wanted to ask the question, and it's a question I've been trying to get at for about 21 months, is under the current statutes. So we have the statute here, it's good, and I just made a couple of comments, but under the current statute, what is holding up the CCB from issuing a license under 678B.220? What is holding up action?
I believe this has been discussed multiple times, but there's been since we took over in July of 2020, there has been no regulations for a licensing process at all until we did the cannabis consumption licenses. So there is no way for us to go through the process of issuing a license until we pass regulations on the licensing process. And there has been none. So that's why it hasn't happened. There has been none until the consumption lounge process.
I understand that.
You can't do it just under statute. You have to have regulations explaining the whole process so everybody knows exactly how it works.
Yeah, there were licenses issued years ago without those regulations.
No, there were different regulations under years ago in 2018 and the ones before. Prior to that, there were just different sets of regulations, but they were all under a regulatory process to issue those licenses.
So understanding that there is a legislative intent to issue a license, there's shall language, which is pretty strong in legal terms. It's without delay. And why would it take so long to craft regulations? These are pretty straightforward. What would take so long to get this in place that you would disenfranchise a county who is required or obligated to get a license?
As I think Director Climate pointed out, this is up for vote in, I think, November, December. These exact same regulations that could have moved forward for the licensing round, and they were denied. I believe this didn't even come up When did this first come up to us? It wasn't until like the middle of last year, was it?
I don't know. I think what Deputy Director Miles said, and I do take a little bit issue with the words disenfranchising a county in this board, and I'm not speaking for the board, I guess I speak for staff, is that we certainly support economic development. But what he's saying is we have to have these regulations in place before we do a licensing round. The regulations were up for adoption, and even members of your camp brought up concern with those the first time, which is why I think, not to speak for the board asked for another workshop from our perspective. So you're asking, what is the mechanism? You're looking at the mechanism. I mean, this is the mechanism. But you've also just asked previously for additional review and more consideration of different language, which is great. That's what this workshop's for.
Right.
That's going to require more time. So again, it's, you guys have made it very clear and made it known that you feel like you're being delayed, and you're a private business in White County, but also from local government officials. Certainly understand that. But every time we take another bite at the apple as we try to move forward, that's taking more time. So I just want that to be clear and on the record. The work from staff has been done and they've been put out, but there continues to be concerns, including from you, about language and requests for different language. Totally fine. That process takes time.
Yeah, it was the one issue, the random number generator that I discussed. If you have a rural county with one license and just leave it to chance, it's not that's a fundamental issue with the current regulation from my point of view. And my request moving forward is I'd like to be able to move forward with this, and I'd like to have and understand a timeline, because that's the other thing. I find it difficult to plan and run a business, and we're quite sizable investment when I don't have any understanding. I can see what the law says. The law is very, very clear in my view, but I have no understanding of the timelines. That
quite frankly, neither do we right now. Based upon the act of the governor's office, that pushed the timeline back. We were trying to move forward in an expeditious manner after the request.
Yeah.
And the other is, your first part of your question was why this took so long. Well, prior to the requests from White Pine County, we had no requests from any county for a new licensing round. Got the request. Yes, it's taken a while. It's got stretched out. We had election, new governor, delay. Hopefully we're back on board. We can move this expeditiously, with the exception of the random number and what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're going forward now. And we won't have any.
I hope so, and I appreciate that. I do know that the governor is very committed to economic development, and I think he would fully support this action that I'm requesting. Matter of fact, I know he does. So hopefully we can move forward with this and get this done. It'd be great.
I'd like to note, he is, as it's detailed on the agenda, this has been exempted specifically by the governor's office, which is why we're discussing it today. So yes, they support economic development, as does the CCP.
And as an aside, there were some other counties that made decisions at the time that impacted why they didn't get a license. And we're trying to make sure when we do this, if we have any other county who's going to petition for the same thing, to get them done when this gets done.
It's great.
To delay their economic impact also.
If there's future complaints about delays, you can squarely blame me. I am the one who moved to not go forward on this at the last meeting. There's no one to blame except me. And I mean, you also opposed it, of course. I hope when you complain about the delay that you also include that. And the reason I wanted it taken off that agenda and sent for a public workshop is because proceeding on this means discussing and re-envisioning all future licensing. I'm not so sure that should be a lottery, and that's why I did not want to move forward with the adoption of a lottery. But that's all I wanted to add, that we did take it off also at I think the request from, I don't know if it was you or from White Pine.
It was a broadness issue.
But I don't want you to beat up on the board or staff when I'm the one who derailed it. And I will continue to, likely when we get to it, express those same concerns with changing how we do all licensing for this one license.
Understood. Thank you for that. I want to be able to do everything in my power to meet the requirements of the CCB. I'm not looking for any favors, never have been. I want to win this opportunity based on merit. And that's been my position for 21 months. I don't want a favor. When I first started to talk to Governor Sisolak about this in the beginning, I told him the same thing. I'm not looking for a favor. I'm asking for you to clear the way so that we can get the right thing happen. I had the same conversation with the current governor. And that's always been my position is for the sake of the state. I have a vested interest, of course. I'm not looking for a favor. I'm looking for clarity and a path forward. And it looks like today is a great step in that direction. And I want to thank you for that. So that concludes my comments on these. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments in Las Vegas on item 4?
This was, would have put any future licensing in the same, and they didn't want other areas other than that one specific.
Hi, good morning or afternoon. Sorry, I don't have my time. For the record, my name is Timothy Eli Otto. I'm representing Cora Lounge. I applied for joining the consumption lounges as a social equity applicant. And the reason I came here today was to express some few concerns that I had heard, the gentleman before me had addressed, but, him coming from maybe a little bit of, financial background, it would have been much addressed differently than how people like me, when we address issues such as this, we are being addressed in a different manner. So I would like to echo some of the issues that he basically found to be a problem that we currently have. We've been echoing these issues since the beginning. There's problems of favoritism. It happened right here in this room. We appointed a chair for the subcommittee who had an invested interest as Black Joy Consultant, as a lobbyist who had a nonprofit organization, which was CEIC, who ended up collecting 7 out of the 10 licenses that were open, that were available. We had 2 alternatives during the last legislative session, previously, in which she was appointed the chair to basically, chair in the, basically make the recommendations for the CCB. Let's look at the panelists that were on that board. Let's review their shared interest and the outcome in which they were awarded at the end of their work. The pool was very limited right from the very get-go. We had alternatives for, it's very difficult. We had an alternative to have a robust social equity economy. And we are the only state, we are the only state, and I'll repeat, the only state that limited social equity licensing pool to just consumption lounges. Why is that?
Statute. That's the only reason right now. And I understand, I completely understand where you're coming from, but statute, it's the only license we were allowed to do on, it's the only licensing round we've had since CCB took over, and they had statutorily, they put a social equity component into it, which we're grateful for. They may continue to do that on future licensing rounds and different licenses they want to put out. We don't know yet, but it's all based on the statute.
Well, which I would believe was introduced by, I believe, Senator Steve Yeager. So in regards to that, the social consumption lounge bill, if I remember correctly, was previously introduced by Senator Steve Yeager back in, was it 2017, 19, 18, one of those years, in which it basically didn't pass. It wasn't until the social equity component was included to the bill in which got majority approval. Okay, can we at least agree to that? Okay, well, when that component was included to it, it did not limit the potential in licensing for the pool in which the license is just like it's been open today is. We're now having discussions to reopen, and I'm talking about the recreational licenses and medical licenses and MME license for laboratories as well. I think that I'm just now beginning to, I've been echoing this issue with the CCB. It's the same issues we had with the Department of Taxation prior, and that is the reason why we have the CCB now. Corruption. It's happening. It's all over again. I witnessed this during SB 374 back in 2013. I missed out on my opportunity. Same way. 2023, I applied. Same. I've waited 10 years. We talk about expertise that needs to be on these boards when decisions are being made. Members on these subcommittees are not experts in this industry. We're the experts. We are in the community. We have been proactively trying to get involved. Proactively, we have been turned away. You give the licenses to your friends, Mr. Clemens, Tyler.
Let's go back on that, sir.
Thanks for your time.
Good morning. I think it's still morning. Amanda Connor for the record. I made this comment when these regs were proposed before the board for adoption, and I just want to echo it here. I believe pursuant to NRS 678B.280, it is required that a criteria of merit be considered and a lottery is not permitted. I do know that there is a bill at the legislature that would propose changing how licensing is done and would allow a lottery, but I think at this time it would be premature to have regulations that does a lottery because the statute specifically calls for the criteria of merit. Thank you.
Hi there, Lake Martin, Nevada Cannabis Association. Amanda went first, so I get to say ditto to her comments regarding NCCR 5.045. I also wanted to, and I mentioned this in our letter, but to clarify on the record that with respect to NCCR 5.040, subsection 3I1, I read it, my view was it was potentially confusing as drafted because it refers to the 5% ownership for lounge applications, which is aligned with the statute. But in the subsection I1, it uses the term proposed cannabis establishment instead of proposed consumption lounge. And so I just thought that there could be potential confusion and figured we could clarify that now and use the term lounge in both the subsection and the section above it, if we're intending to refer to lounges.
And that's all we're intending to refer to.
Okay. So just if it's possible to clarify that language, I think would be helpful. And then same comment with respect to what Amanda said. I do read the statute as being a shall consider, and when licenses are eliminated by a lottery, you don't have the opportunity to consider merit. And there are, great public policy arguments made in some of the letters as well. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Stephanie?
Speak my name?
Yeah, please.
Yes, please. Linda Monroe. I don't know a lot about the different codes, but I guess it's the 5.0451 for the social equity establishment for the conditional license. It says there's no guarantee after you meet all of the requirements and put the big money with it. With the social equity, I always want to say inequity because it just doesn't seem fair, but social equity, maybe one day it will be. There's a lot of requirements, and it just doesn't seem fair that you have a lottery system and you're not transparent on how many is in the lottery. how many applicants were in the lottery?
I think we put that out before the last lottery. There was a specific amount and that was put out in public information of how many applicants there were.
Never got the right number. Never got the right number. And how out of a lottery can you get 8 out of 10 licenses? I don't understand that. And it's led by one person, and that's Aisha Goins. And she's a lobbyist. She's a lobbyist, and it's just all connected. It's not fair. And when you really believe in these laws that you are putting together, you're taking time to supposed to be working to be fair and just for all. And when you have certain people that believe in these laws and what you're putting together, and these criteria are very hard. There's just not something, oh, this is social equity. You have to prove that you lived in a place for 5 years where they mainly picked up people for a dime bag of weed and put them in jail for a long time, okay? And you had to have a conviction also. And then you had to have money. $15,000, that's not, I know, and that's supposed to been.
$2,500. Yeah, that 25.
Well, altogether with other things, with $2,500, you know, that's still a lot of money. And it's just not fair. They need to be, no lottery. I don't understand that. For those odds, if I could get 8 out of 10 in a lottery and it's supposed to be 105 people that are in that lottery, there's no way.
There wasn't 105 people in the lottery.
Okay, well, that's what I was told.
No, there was 99 applicants altogether. 20 of them was for retail, I believe. What was I'm sorry, I don't remember the breakdowns on it, but we submitted that information out.
Exactly. It was very confusing.
The numbers were very clearly spelled out exactly.
No, they were not clearly. That was not clearly. They were very mismatched. But I don't see how a person can get 8 out of 10 licenses. Anyway, going ahead, obviously she's locked in where her licenses are going to go ahead and be the lounges that represent social equity, that don't represent me, or people that look like me that have had detriment to the marijuana world when it was not legal. So, and that's what the social equity was supposed to be bringing to the table. But it's not. This is not, you know, I want to believe in something. You know, I believe in structure. And I believe in it should be something, because it's like, and even if, do any of y'all go to the dispensaries? The stuff that they're selling there is trash. You know, somebody needs to be like, really? Because pretty soon that's going to take a dive. And when that takes a dive, then you're going to probably see people that are really running the things really show their true colors. And it's not for social equity, and it's not for really having caring about the people and their needs for marijuana in their life for medical reasons. You know, I don't use it for recreation. It's not a recreation, it's a medicine. So it's sacred to me. I can't say recreation, okay? But as they put the label on it, recreation, you know, to take a option of THC to whatever, you know. Anyway, it's just not fair. And I don't understand. You guys need to change it. I know you think that you could just go ahead and keep doing it and no one's going to know. People know the truth. If you live the truth, you're going to know the truth. And this ain't the truth. That lottery system was a bunch. It was absolutely fraud. How can someone get 8 out of 10 licenses and the night before she raved about it on her TikTok that if you come to her little show, her little class, that you will get a license because they get licenses and they got 8 out of 10? That's not fair. 8 out of 10? No, let's be fair about it. Let's give it a good shot for people to give a good shot. I'm not asking for, if we would have lost and it looked like, okay, you just didn't get chosen this time. Maybe next time. That lottery system was rigged all the way. And one day the truth will set you free. Thank you very much.
Anybody else here in Las Vegas like to comment on the licensing round changes?
I have a comment. Should I wait till we're done with all the?
Yeah, I was going to ask the board members at the end. Yeah. Is there anybody still left in Carson City?
There's no public left.
Chair, board members, do you have any comments on item 4?
Well, just in case anybody isn't aware, Aisha Goins isn't an applicant. She was somebody who had a training program that prepared applicants. I just don't want anyone to think that the same person got 8 licenses, because there was a limitation that you could only apply one time. And then there was work to make sure that applications only had individuals one time, and they would be disqualified if they submitted multiple applications. Okay, so on the criteria of merit, I don't even see how we have the authority to diverge from the criteria of merit, because it is a shall. There was an attempt to change it to May. Today's the deadline for bills to get out of their committee, and that one hasn't had a hearing, so I don't think that's going to be changed to May. So I think that's an indication that this was not meant to be. The legislature has not changed from the criteria of merit. Maybe they will by the end of the legislative session. I agree, and I agree that we need to remember our policy goals there's other good policy goals out there, but our stated policy goals are related to revenue, the economy. That's our number one stated goal. There are other good goals out there, but we need to keep our eye on the first one, which is, I've been brainwashed by gaming's practice of always going back to what are our policy goals. And we need to always do that. Whenever we adopt a regulation, discuss a regulation, what are our policy goals, and are we moving towards those policy goals? I don't think one of those policy goals is to avoid lawsuits. I think that's a bonus. I think we should take the sting out of any lawsuits. We shouldn't do anything that will encourage lawsuits, but our main focus is not discouraging lawsuits, or is not avoiding lawsuits. With our current lottery system for consumption lounges, I don't think we're out of necessarily the clear for lawsuits, and I don't know that we achieved other policy goals that we were intended to achieve, but that is different because the legislature did have a different licensing process. They did not refer to the required criteria of merit. And finally, one of our, if one of our policy goals is to increase diversity, I don't know, nobody's said that on the board that is a policy goal that is aimed at being met by the lottery, but the lottery doesn't do that. So that's my comments on these. I don't necessarily think that a lottery, I see the merit to a lottery. I don't necessarily think the current criteria of merit has been proven as the best way to award licenses, but I would love to hear proposals about hybrids or information about how these have played out in other states. But as of now, I just don't think we have the authority to change to a lottery, and I don't think it's getting us towards the stated policy goals.
For the record, Michael Douglas. I appreciate the comments of my fellow board member. I disagree in part with her. Right now, we don't have any good answers to the problem. The legislature failed to put forth a meaningful social equity program or give us authority to put one together or give us the financing to do so. I may be mistaken. Clark County is the only one who's tried to set some money aside to assist social equity applicants in this minor area. This whole area was set up for the folks with the big money. There's no other way to say it based upon the fees involved. As to what occurred and the issue of lottery and social equity, I'm sorry, we live in a legal world. And across the country, no matter how right they're doing, the lawsuits are just one on top of the other. As we look to craft regulations for even the social equity program, every time we turned around, there was a court case coming up that either limited or said you could not do something unless you had an appropriate study. And in some cases, even with the appropriate study, you still could not do it. So it was just damn foolish to go down a line that would just get you into court and have the whole process delayed 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And I don't even want to get into the amount of money that the state has paid out to settle and additional license consolidations, the first statewide licensing on merit, because of the issue as to whether merit was properly merit or whether it was influenced by an individual giving out side information. I don't know. I was not involved, don't know about it, only anecdotal. So we do have a disagreement, but I think the purpose is to give, as the one licensee or potential licensee said, everyone a fair shot at getting into the game. And the question is, how do we get there? We're still working at it. We're a work in progress. That's my 2 cents. We can move to the next item.
Next item is.
I'm just going to go.
Wow.
Leave that one
Just
there.
got it down, you know, said it how it is, took the floor right out of the
Let's go to general public comment.
And final agenda item is, again, final public comment.
Hello. Good afternoon. Jason Grinninger for the record with Atlas Alchemy.
Please sit down for the
member of the Chamber of Cannabis. I have something to give to you, a handout. Is that possible? Sure. To all of you. This is not as much as a deck card, but an annotated peer-reviewed document, so that you can see what that's. I'm mostly referring to the site here with the little black dots all over. And just again, good morning. In summary, we humans have an endocannabinoid system that makes 150 endogenous cannabinoids. So we make 150 keys that actually fit receptors in our cells that manage our equilibriums. Many of you through science class may have heard of a CB1, CB2 receptor. The C stands for cannabinoid. So we have an endogenous system that uses keys. Now, the cannabis plant makes up to 144 known cannabinoids. And these endogenous keys, only 7 plants are known to do that. And this one is exceptional. And this is in reference, of course, to Section 11 and our database concerns. And when we do set that database up, it'll help us understand much more about what this plant's doing medicinally, how it works, and finding out how those minor cannabinoids might do the job and help with things. So if we set the database up in a certain way, we can actually have all of that data be research quality data that would actually fit into NIH or other research processes. In a simple way, once the database is set up, it won't be the CCB's objective to fill it, just make sure people are filling it what they should. And if we do that and create this the right way, we have a research quality product even on every adult use product, because we can attach those variables that you're seeing in front of you to outcomes. And that's how we're actually going to find out what this is really doing and the understanding argument before why we're here. You know, Charlotte's Web, the medicinal component, is how we got started. This is the underlying science behind that. And it's exceptional. There's a lot to learn here, and we're not allowed to, obviously, because of Schedule 1, to say we understand. We trust our own research. And it's peer-reviewed data from around the world show that there's a lot to look at and a lot to understand behind why we've been fighting for this plant for 2,000 years. And why we're here fighting to make use of it. And so if I can do anything to help with process and help organize the database or any questions on the medical component and just cannabinoids receptors, please feel free. I just wanted to add a little something, hopefully uplifting at this point, just of what some of the basic understanding and knowledge we need to have behind what we're really doing here. There's an underlying component as to why we have all these arguments, and this is part of that. And I just wanted to help provide that because I was at our Capitol on Monday, sharing with our legislators, and we all have beliefs based on a lot of information. It's hard to change knowledge. Once you have knowledge, it's easy to change beliefs. And even our legislators don't know about necessarily the endocannabinoid system. I've worked in surgery for 33 years. I was surgeons that look at me and go, "What are you talking about?" And I got to look at them and go, "You know what C stands for in CB1? I'm like, no. It stands for cannabinoid. It's our endogenous system." So just want to add that. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to add the information to the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please.
Noon board members. For the record, my name is Donna Bath, and I'm here. I'm the Director of Community Relations and Special Projects for Silver Lion Farm. But as a background, why am I here? Certainly, I'm probably in an oxymoron position because I'm not a user. Never have been. Maybe I will. I'm not going to say never. But I joined the team with Silver Lion Farm as a background for 20 years. I was a county clerk, court clerk for White Pine County. I worked for a United States Senate. I had my own consulting business for permitting. I've worked in economic development and was in retirement and was asked to come forward and help a much needed business in our community try to succeed. I thought it was going to be a very easy process, a one-year gig, and I would be back in retirement, hopefully on the beaches somewhere, having a margarita, not marijuana. But anyway, here I am, and I have to tell you, it's been probably the most challenging effort that I've ever encountered. This company was caught between. We started our process in 2019. Under that jurisdiction, we were totally going into hemp. Couldn't get, and still today, the Department of Health has not done the regulations to allow hemp-infused consumption for human consumption. However, it's on every shelf in Nevada. And when you call the Department of Health, they say, well, you tell us who it is and we'll go shut them down. But that doesn't help the industry. I don't want to place blame. Certainly appreciate and understand the tremendous task that you all have. It's been very frustrating for a community. We rely on mining almost entirely. We have a lot of challenges in rural Nevada. And I will echo the comment that our CEO gave. Would be very appreciative if you could allow public comment for the rural communities. It's really tough. It's an 8-hour drive for me to get here and get back. And we had to get a hotel. You have to come down here. When you don't have that open dialogue and you're in a rural community, Vegas and Reno certainly have an opportunity to do that. But there are rural communities that want to get into this industry, and they deserve the right to have that economic development. It's much, much needed in these rural communities. We have school systems where our kids are working right now out of a 109-year-old school. And I would welcome you to come to Ely. I would love to take you around and show you what we love about our community. But we need these industries for our economic sustainability and increasement. And, we have broadband issues. We have all kinds of issues that we're trying to work out. And I just implore you to please do what you can to put this on an equal playing field for the other communities that didn't get that chance in that first round. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me, and please come, Dealey. Love to show you around. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I forgot to note, like we do, every time this comes up, I was born in Ely. I'm from Ely. I'm from White Pine.
Mike Weeble, County Manager, White Pine County. Again, just for a brief public comment to wrap up after listening to what the board is wrestling with and how to address these issues. To Ms. Bath's point, when this board makes these decisions and passes these regulations and managing this industry, you're affecting these small businesses, maybe big businesses in here, local communities, and how they use and take advantage of the product. When you pass these regulations and you give those opportunities to the rural communities, though, your actions support libraries, roads, schools. I mean, it's a big difference in the rural communities to the quality of life for all the residents in rural Nevada who we're here because 9 years ago there was a moratorium passed in White Pine. 9 years it's already been, and sometimes, as Ms. Bath suggested, the population in rural Nevada is a little behind, and not for their own fault, but just because they aren't getting as much information in the rules to make good informed decisions, or we're just hearing about it secondhand. We're always just a little slow to react. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to present on this. And then a final thought on the regulations, and it's this. Given the shall language and that burden that's required to get at least one production or one cultivation medical establishment in each county up and running, and how long it takes to get the regulations just right, and it may never be just right. There always will be challenges. Lawsuits are filed without merit all the time, unfortunately. Regulations are a living organism. You can always tweak and adjust. You don't want to be causing confusion in the industry, of course. But if it means that we could be moving forward as expeditious as possible, I suggest you do pass the regulations that suggested, that you do adopt them, and then keep working and looking on how we can perfect that and hold more workshops and have more opportunities to review regulations on almost all your agenda. Take a look at everything because there's a new industry. And I don't have to tell you this, I'm not the legal counsel for the CCB, but the wheel has been invented already through taxation, even the way the state water engineer does and issues permits. I mean, you've seen enough of it in your career, you don't want to talk about it, but there's always permits and licenses and applications in all industries, and they're always subject to litigation. But what's most important is that you're making your best objective determination going forward. And what's more important than anything is that we are moving forward. So that's my final thought. I encourage the board to keep moving as efficiently as possible, because that's what happens. Government just gets bound down and we start looking and get distracted, saying, well, we're going to get sued for that. Oregon got sued for that last year. It's like, yeah, that's going to happen. But if you can adopt the regulations as you presented today, you're getting close because you've already done it for consumption lounges. So, and then we can look at maybe a better way of doing it as the challenges come in. Anyway, I appreciate the board's time and consideration. I don't know the logistics that if we suggest a change of an and or an or today, do you have to have another workshop? Or can you just, with your discretion, say, we've taken in all the consideration, we've heard from the public on this. Let's go ahead and make a couple of tweaks this afternoon and get it on and put the public notice out and look at adopting these, or if we have to come up for another workshop. It just seems so burdensome because I know that this agency has the discretion to make those regulations, and we appreciate public input, but sometimes efficiency is just as important as it serves the interests of Nevada. So thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else here in Las Vegas?
One last time.
My name is Bob Kuroko. I'm the CEO at Silver Lion Farms. And I just want to say this. I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to have this discussion today. I found it very beneficial and greatly appreciated. I really mean that. My hope would be that, well, my request would be exactly what Mike just talked about is you have a lot of input now, and make the decision. Let's get the regs done. And my recommendation would be at perhaps even the next meeting, put those regulations up for vote, open the licensing, and move forward if that's at all possible. That would go a long way. And I think there's a lot of good things happening right now. I've had the opportunity to review some of the new legislation that is being contemplated for comment, and a lot of good things are happening in that regard. You know, even the excise tax and the market value calculation for the excise tax on the cultivation side. I mean, I have a personal preference for how I'd like that to work. I don't think that's going to work out that way, but at least the current law looks like it's going to be fixed. And I bring this up because it's really important that we do what we can working collaboratively to really help this industry. We've got market players right now, I call them the regulated, who are trying, it's a lot of pressure out there. It's a tough way to go. The marketing conditions are very, very challenging for a lot of these, especially the small companies. I've run very large multinational operations. I understand how games are played between states and across countries. And there's some of that happening right now on the tax side around 280E. And so there's a big advantage right now for the big boys, the big companies. So without modification to the law, you're going to drive out all the small players in the market. So my point of bringing this up is I like where this is going. These are good moves that are happening right now in the state of Nevada. There's a perception that this state has not been really open for business for a couple of years. Call it COVID, a lot of different things happening. And I think we together have a great opportunity to put Nevada back on the map as a great place to do business. And I think we should seize this opportunity together. I really do. And show everybody in the state of Nevada that Nevada is open for business. And I do know that's how Joe is looking at this, Governor Lombardo. He got elected on that platform. And I think we have an opportunity to follow his lead and do great things for this emerging industry. So thank you very much.
Anybody else down?
Last.
Okay.
Bob, is it want to say that I'm glad your last comment was on the positive side. Well, thank you for that. Thank you. Hello, board. Tanya Haven, for the record, TANYAHAVEN. Newly licensed to cultivate and produce cannabis here in Las Vegas. Can I say thank you very much first for approving that license for me? I'm very proud of it, and I hope to go far with it. It's going to be one of many licenses. I hope that's what's in my heart. Let's see, second, I want to appreciate your open meetings because it helps further and advance my education and all of our education in this industry. And if I've learned anything, it's to spend time in this because I've been trying to get licensed and be employed in this industry now for the last 4 years and kind of was feeling, I can see how people were thinking you're kind of hitting a wall. But what I've learned is if your heart is in it, it's not that you're being told no. It's your job to turn the no into a yes. It's your job to look within and not without. You're being told no for a specific reason. Find out why you're being told. It could be something within you that needs to be fixed, not necessarily that there's something wrong with the industry or the laws that you've made. So if I wish everybody was still here because I wanted a few of the other people that came up and commented. They're the one that helped bring this comment out because I can see the frustration that people are feeling. But I have found a way to understand what the no's are trying to tell you. It doesn't mean, no, you don't belong here. We think there's something wrong with you. We're better than you. That's not what it means at all. It's telling the applicant to look within and to change your own energy, to find the right person within you that can help you go further and be the better you, because it's not the actual drug that we're selling. It's a piece of everybody, the person who's behind the drug. And everybody needs to have that positive heart, the positive thoughts to be able to be handing somebody something that's going to, heal them and give them a better day, a better outlook, change their frame of mind, and not have your own problems or your own issues or negativity on your hands as you're handing them something that, we're trying to promote as a positive thing out into the world. So hopefully, since this is on YouTube, it'll go further for the people that were left in early and didn't see it. One last thing, I want to say thank you for all your outpouring of your emotional support. I ran the Las Vegas 2023 marathon in February, and I ran it to promote cannabis education. So I was interviewed many times through the process of the marathon, and that is always what I tried to speak on. And when people would ask why we were running, people would wear signs, what are you running it for? And I would always tell them I'm running for, to help promote that, the cannabis industry is a booming industry and something that we all need to learn better on and change the stigma on. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks. Anybody else down in Las Vegas? Even though nobody's there, anybody in Carson City want to make a public comment? Okay. Back to you.
Oh. I think we can move to adjournment then.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Eventually get a phone